Hello everyone and welcome to the next video in our continuing series of Witchwood card first impressions. It is just after the reveal stream, so we've got quite a few cards to go through today, but first of all we've got to start with some cards that were discussed in a previous Designer Insights video around Echo. So these are going to be two Echo cards, and to start off with we have Face Collector. Face Collector is a legendary rogue minion. It's 3 mana, 2/2 with Echo, and Battle Cry, add a random legendary minion to your hand. So, Pandemonia, how good are random legendary minions?
So me being the eternal pessimist, the first thing I think about is when you say random legendaries, I'm already starting to think about, okay, what's the worst possible ones you can get? And so the first things that come to mind are some of the classic ones: your Molehouse Mana Storm,
Mm,
your Lawwalker Cho, your Tinkmaster, your Nat Pagal,
mhm.
and then also equally bad in recent times. I can't remember which set it was from, where you got the princes.
Yeah,
You got what's it? It's Keleseth, Tal'Daram, and
Valenia?
Valinor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Valinor.
No, Valenia's the weapon.
No. What's the four prince?
I
Vondar. Yeah. But anyway, Prince Four.
yeah,
And
Prince
so
4,
basically, all of those are pretty terrible to get off of this.
yeah. And King
Uh,
Togwaggle. Mayor Noggenfaga.
yeah. So there's a
The
lot of
meme.
memes, but in terms of obviously there's also some good ones. I mean, what are some of the good ones you can get from this?
So, I mean, talking neutral ones, there's Lich King and Elise. Those are probably two of the best from the Year of the Mammoth sets, or the sets that are still going to be in Year of the Raven for standard. And then, of course, there's some of the old classic ones that are pretty good. I mean, most of them are pretty decent in Rogue. Even some of them that are not that good in their own classes, like Prince Valen, are kind of good in Rogue. And then you have the, objectively good ones like Tyrion, maybe a Archmage Antonidas, Jaraxxus
Oh my
for some incredible value.
I'm just thinking, oh no, the memes are mine with like Archmage
Archmage prep.
Antonidas. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the early classic class ones are very good to get. Even if you're just getting like Van Cleef, right? That's pretty good. Getting any of the rogue ones is generally quite good. Sherazin is also, there from Angora. So there are a few good ones, but the pool is very diluted and it's very imbalanced, right? They're either usually pretty good or pretty bad. And I think with a lot of those ones you were talking about, they tend to be a lot of like build arounds. So,
Our
it,
variants, basically. I mean,
yeah.
we'd have to do the we'd have to do the exact stats and work out the numbers, but just like spitballing from from the top of my head, there's a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones. The variance is very high, right? So
Yeah, and the problem with these kind of cards is you can't look at like the average because the average doesn't mean anything when it's a relatively small pool with a very wide range, right?
yes.
So like, yeah, you need to look at whether the average is good or bad rather than whether what the average like stats would be, let's say.
Because I mean,
For
average
something
stats
like
is
a
will probably be 6/6, and you'll go, oh, that's not too bad. Except it ranges from a 0/4 to a 12/12, right? That's
yeah, yeah,
obviously the problem with using. That's the problem with statistics sometimes, right? Depends how you
yeah.
interpret it.
Yeah, so I mean, Face Collector, one of the first things that really stuck out to me though with this card was Quest Rogue. The nature of any cheaper minions and that allowing them to echo means they make very good targets for Quest Rogue because you can play Face Collector, then you get another one, and you can keep playing them until eventually you want to maybe bounce the last one back to your hand that you play, and then you can just keep doing that the next turn, right? It's a very slow way to complete your quest though. It's not impossible to complete it on 3 mana minions. We've seen this before a little bit with like Cold Light Oracle, which is an important card that's now rotating out for Quest Rogue. And whether that's too much of a hit for Quest Rogue, we'll have to see. But the upside of getting random legendaries is a lot worse than drawing cards from your deck compared to something like Cold Light Oracle. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it might just be a little bit too slow for Quest Rogue. And as you mentioned, the legendary kind of table is very wide and very varied, and a lot of them tend to be more expensive, and that makes them also bad for Quest Rogue because it doesn't give you like cheap legendaries to play out on the battlefield. To be 5/5s once you've completed your quest. So ultimately, I don't know. We're gonna have to see with Face Collector. It could be kind of a weak value engine for Rogue,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really seem to fit any of their current archetypes too well, except maybe Quest Rogue. I mean, Miracle Rogue doesn't really play for like a value game plan anymore. It's more of a Leroy Coldblood kill you game plan. And yeah, I mean, Quest Rogue, as we said, this could be a little bit slow. Maybe it can work though.
Yeah, it's always like it's like a card that's definitely full of memes, right? But it's a case of the real big question, obviously, is it going to be a competitive card, and it'll be interesting to see. Like it has
Yeah.
potential,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Then
very
the next
interesting
card,
use of Echo, at least. And another interesting
yeah,
use of Echo, and a card that a lot of people have been comparing to Defile, but personally not a comparison I like very much, is Warpath. It's a 2-mana warrior spell. It has Echo, and it's a common, and it reads deal 1 damage to all minions. So obviously people comparing this to Defile because it's 2 mana and it deals 1 damage and it's kind of repeatable. The big difference here is that you have to keep paying mana to repeat it. So if you
yeah.
want to repeat it 5 times, that's going to cost you 10 mana.
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's Whirlwind with upside. I mean, it's basically a more versatile Whirlwind. Essentially, you're paying 1 mana more for it to be a Whirlwind. And I mean, the problem is, like, if you just go off the top of my head, if you're doing it, if you're doing it twice, you're paying 4 mana to do what Volcanic Potion does for 3. If you're doing 3 damage, you're paying 6 mana to deal what like a lot of what Excavated Evil did, or what Hellfire does for even less.
Yeah.
For 8 mana, you're doing what a Flame Strike does, but
Yep.
it also damages. So the whole thing is you basically, for the versatility, you paying a 1 mana premium essentially.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, for a card like this, you couldn't really have it at 1 or 3 mana realistically,
yeah,
right?
one would be bonkers good,
Yeah.
but one would be stupid, right? I mean, it would just be strictly better than Whirlwind.
Yep.
And a 4 mana Flame Strike. It would be stupid. Whereas, yeah, like you say, 3 mana would be so terrible.
Yep.
So yeah, 2 mana. I mean, it's a balanced card. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, it all comes down to if like we always joke, if Control Warrior becomes the deck again, because
Yeah.
I don't see this deck. I don't see this card being any other deck besides a really slow Control Warrior style deck.
Yeah. I,
I don't see a tempo deck wanting this. I don't see any aggressive warrior deck want this.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a control warrior that wants to have a more versatile removal. We do see Sleep with the Fishes going, or rotating out, which would have been a really good card to combo with Warpath. But other than that, one of the things I like about Warpath, and that makes it different to Defile as well, is that if you do have minions on the board and they have, let's say, Divine Shields or a Taunt on 1 health, you can Warpath the first time, make some trades to set up your second Warpath to be better. So you can kind of trade in between your Warpaths, and that can be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And the other important thing I think to note, and this is what for me is really going to be what determines whether Warpath is worth it or not, is going to be what kind of synergies exist for damaging your own minions, right? Cards like Acolyte of Pain,
yeah.
Armor Smith, all these kind of cards where the multiple instances of damage can really help you get some kind of an advantage. And if Warpath can operate with those kind of cards, then we could really see Warpath be quite powerful. You talked about Control Warrior. The one thing that people didn't really like about Warpath was that 2 mana it doesn't fit the odd deck,
I was
so you
about
can't
to
do the
say.
tank up thing.
I was about to say, yeah, it doesn't go with the odd hero power, the odd whatever the guy's name is, like Baku.
Baku, yeah.
Yeah, the 9 mana guy. So yeah, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, it might be good enough. I mean, the whole point is, unlike Defile, which requires quite a setup in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4. Like this is a lot more versatile, and you can just go, okay, I play it a few times and I clear the board. It requires less complicated maths. Because let's not lie, sometimes Defile maths can get quite tricky.
Yeah, and like that maths is also, in some ways it's a little bit more complicated with Warpath because you can make all the trades and you need to figure this out before you do any of your Warpaths.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does have a different level of versatility to Warpath. Not so much, sorry, compared to Defile. Not so much in the mana cost, but in how you can use it and how you can sequence things around it, which is quite interesting. And ultimately, like we said, it kind of had to be a 2 mana. At 1 and 3, it wouldn't have really worked.
Kind of like the way I feel it should be 1.5 mana, right?
So I mean, I think it's good to see it. It's good to see Blizzard not only designing for the the odd deck or something. They've made this card and they're like, well, at what we want this card to do, it has to kind of be 2 mana. So they didn't like try and shoehorn it into 1 or 3.
Oh,
to make it
oh,
work
imagine
for
three
the
mana.
use of the
Oh,
hunt decks. Yeah.
oh, I'm just imagining. Oh,
Okay, so moving on to the cards revealed from today's reveal stream, we have Houndmaster Shaw, a Hunter Legendary, a 4 mana 3/6 that gives your other minions Rush. So Rush is basically like Charge, except you can't attack heroes, on that first turn that they're played. They can
but
attack
no
for
go
all the turns
face.
afterwards. Yeah, so
No go
a
face.
hunter card that prevents you from going face in this scenario, but it has pretty good stats, so that's a good start.
Yeah, 4 mana 3/6. I mean, it's quite. It passes the vanilla test. I mean, I really foresee this becoming almost like a fan draw in a way. Like
Yep.
as soon as your opponent plays this, you probably want to kill it.
Mm.
Because I mean it's better statted than Tundra Rhino, but it's not a beast, which is obviously quite important for hunter synergies, especially if you consider like Deathstalker Exar.
Yeah.
But as a 4-drop, it curves. I mean, if you want to play, let's say, the first thing that popped to most people's minds was the Spellstone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you play turn 4 this into turn 5 Spellstone, get a bunch of wolves with Rush.
Yep.
Pretty good for controlling the board.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of powerful cards you can combine with it. Even like something like Savannah Highmane a little bit later, where you can trade with the Highmane and then the hyenas that come out will also have Rush. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like a really big swipe, in a way. Uh,
Oh,
and I mean,
okay.
yeah,
It's like more like
there's
explosive shot, right?
yeah, there's also a few like poisonous minions that work quite well with this.
Yeah, they
So
got
to have like the kind of pseudo removal, your giant wasp and the
Basilisk.
basilisk. Basilisk is pretty good once again because of the divine shield. And then there's also the what's the original poisonous one? The 3 mana 2/3. I forgot its name now.
Emperor Cobra.
Emperor Cobra, of course, of course.
Yeah,
And a lot of those are also Emperor Cobra and Wasp in particular, and Stonestone Basilisk are all kind of effects you can get off your Deathstalker Rexar. So you can combine Houndmaster Shaw and the Deathstalker Rexar beasts you get later in the game
Ooh.
for quite powerful tempo turns. And that kind of nicely makes up for Deathstalker Rexar's weakness in that you kind of give up a lot of tempo by creating all these beasts. And Houndmaster Shaw is kind of a nice addition to that to help you gain back tempo. And I think it's definitely a card that points towards a kind of mid-range hunter style, right?
I mean, obviously, inherently doesn't want you to go face.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see a more mid-range hunter, probably a bit faster than your current spell hunter, but slow,
Yeah.
slower than a traditional aggro face hunter.
Yeah, but the important thing is after it does, trades on the board the first time, if it sticks around, it's going face after that because more than likely not going to be able to make a trade the next time, and then it's just going to be able to go face. So in many ways, Rush is still aggressive in this sense. When everything has Rush, your minions that you played the previous turn just always going to go face, right? The second turn. So you're kind of controlling the board from your hand, which allows your other minions already on the board to go face. So it can kind of be seen as a little bit aggressive in that style as well, but it's definitely something that helps you snowball an advantage, which is more mid-range hunter style rather than like a face hunter.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
think this is going to be. This looks like it has good potential to be good.
yep. And next we have Glinda Crowskin. This is a 6 mana 3/6 Warlock Legendary.
3/7. You mean?
Sorry, 3/7 Warlock Legendary, and it gives minions in your hand Echo. So the quite interesting thing here is to kind of think about what synergies really work with Glinda Crowskin. I mean, in Warlock, a lot of the current meta decks are playing generally quite expensive minions. I mean, the traditional Warlock decks that have played cheap minions that would kind of synergize in the same turn as Zoo. But is Glinda really something that's going to work in Zoo?
I wouldn't. I mean, you don't really want a 6 mana 3/7
Yeah.
in zoos. So the only decks you really want, I think, are in slower, more value-orientated decks where you're trying to get the most value out of your cards. Because we have Glinda potentially being a card.
Yeah, so if we talk about some of the cards that Glinda synergizes with, the first card that popped to mind for me is Gnome Feratu. So in kind of control mirrors, going Glinda and then playing 2 Gnome Feratus for the cost of 1 in terms of cards in your hand is pretty impactful. Getting further ahead in the fatigue matchup the fatigue counts basically is what Gnome Ferratu's real power is in those kind of control mirrors. So that can be pretty powerful. And if Glinda ever sticks for a turn and you're able to go 5 Gnome Ferratus, then, who needs Azari when you can play 5 Gnome Ferratus in a turn?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously that's always Happy Christmas Land in terms of if you're hoping it to sit. So I think the main way you got to try and look and assess this card is, like you said, cheap things that you can combo with at the same turn. So Nomferatu, you can play it twice on 10 mana. You can play it twice. Then you've also got cards like Glacial Shard and the Cobalt Librarian.
Yep.
Now those two cards. I mean, the Glacial Shard is more of a tempo option. The fact that you're doing it, you're probably just freezing the idea is to freeze your opponent's minions and their face, to kind of store them so that your Glinda hopefully stays alive another turn.
Yeah.
The Librarian is basically just life tapping yourself a lot.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, if you play on turn 10, you're taking 8 damage and drawing 4 cards.
Yeah, so that's for a matchup where you don't necessarily want to be behind on the fatigue game plan. That's for like matchups where you want to just maximize your card draw. Maybe if you have some kind of combo Warlock that's specifically trying to do some kind of combo, you can get extra card draw out of your Librarian. But I think
Master O-card this, right?
Yeah, you can Master O-card it out.
So I mean, that's some potential synergies, right?
Yeah.
Master
O-card's 9 mana, so that makes it even harder to do anything that same turn.
Right,
you could play infinite Snowflipper Penguins. That is something we also not really mentioned, but
Snowflipper Penguins and Wisps.
Yeah, I'm not sure Snowflipper Penguins are worth putting in your deck, even if you can have infinite 6 of them, because that's the most you can actually play on the board in a turn.
Yeah, so we will see. It's a very interesting design. I think it's a very interesting card, and we'll have to see what other cards are made to like other Echo or other cards that have potential.
Yeah. I think it's definitely like reasonably costed and stuff for its effect, right? You can't make it too much cheaper, or the combos become a little bit silly for the kind of cards you could play on the same turn.
You have to be very careful making a card like that as well, right?
Yeah. And at 3/7, the stats are pretty decent. 7 kind of survives, like Fireball. There's a lot of kind of 6 damage breakpoints. But importantly for Warlock Mirrors, it will die to a fully upgraded Spellstone, which is something that Cobalt Librarian can also help you get to, is that fully upgraded Spellstone. And then if it does survive, one of the other really good synergies can very often be something like Stonehill Defender.
The value.
Yeah, just getting repeated taunts, and you can get big ones, like Lich King or class ones here. A lot of the Warlock class ones are actually pretty bad, right? We look at like Pit Lords and even Tar Lurker is not necessarily.
Doesn't have taunts.
Well, no, I'm not thinking Felguard.
Felguard,
yeah.
Tar Lurker's not bad.
Yeah,
I mean, you can obviously get Void Lord. Void Walker's obviously bad.
You want to get those Void Daddies and
Void Daddies, Lich King,
and Lich Kings, but the pool's a little bit more diluted than it is in a class like Paladin, where you have more high value class.
Tyrion and Sunkeeper.
Yeah. So I mean, those are a lot of the kind of cards that work well with Glinda. So I definitely think it's going to be an interesting design space around Glinda in the future as well, and what kind of cheap neutral minions they're going to print. That could be.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of. I mean, in terms of you got to worry about the design space, right? Is when you make cards. The problem is when you print like sort of very open-ended cards like this, you got to be very careful about what happens, right?
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to our first of our neutral cards, we have Nightmare Amalgam. This is a 3 mana 3/4 epic minion, and it has all the tribes that it currently exists. So it's an elemental, so demon, it's a murloc, it's a dragon, it's a beast, and it's a pirate, and a totem. So
and a mech, you left up mech.
And a mech. I'm pretty sure.
And the best part is like if you look at the picture, they explained it on the stream. Is literally they told the artist apparently to draw all the things, and like there's actually you can see all the parts in the picture actually.
Yeah, you can see the like totem arm, the other mech arm. You can see the kind of
human wings,
tail vibe going on at the back with the thing, and then like
the murloc head.
I thought the wings were more dragon and the horn was more demon.
Oh, yeah, that's
kind of the like murloc-y back with the pirate face with the pirate hat.
And the patches.
Yeah. And then elemental. Oh, it's because the pirate head is on fire, right?
So
That's
yeah, they kind of.
uh,
So a 3-mana 3/4, it's pretty solid stats. I mean, if we recall back, it's better than a spider tank.
yeah.
Well, it's a spider tank with more tribes.
Yeah, that can
So
be eaten by more crabs.
yeah, so the bad thing is it can be eaten by like Galactic Crawler, it can be eaten by
Hungry
Hungry
crab,
Cat.
dragon
But
slayer.
oh, Dragon Slayer, yeah. The good thing though is it does proc all those effects. So if you want to play this in Elemental Shaman, you can go for it. If you want to play this in Demon Warlock, go for it. I mean, Murloc Paladin, you could put this guy in there. Dragon Priest, in Hunter, in Warrior
Yeah.
for the Pirates, in Shaman. So potentially this card could go in nearly every class. And the interesting thing is in each of those classes, it will be there for a different reason.
Yeah. I think, some of the decks that kind of stand out to me are Murloc Paladin, or basically any of the Murloc decks, because having this into Gentle Megasaur is quite a strong curve. Maybe even
Yeah.
Murloc Shaman, uh, as a way to bring back Shaman. Because there it counts as a totem too, so maybe you have some fringe totem synergies as well. Um, and for elementals, it's actually quite important because there's not a lot of really good 3 elementals. It's pretty much igneous elementals, the kind of go-to. So igneous elementals not very powerful on curve. It gives you kind of value later, but at a 2/3, if you're wanting to play a kind of curve elemental deck, Nightmare Amalgam makes a lot more sense. For demons, I can only really see it working kind of a zoo deck because your decks that want to cheat out demons with Possessed Lackey and the weapon are certainly not going to want to be pulling out a Nightmare Amalgam.
So the important thing to note is what they did say on stream is that means you will be able to discover this from all the different effects that say discover an elemental or discover a Murloc or discover a
Deathstalker
dragon.
Rexark will be able to give you every single tribe if you discover a Nightmare Amalgam.
Theoretically, once they fix it, you can get this with Deathstalker Rexark.
It's going to be a lot of text on one card.
Yeah, when you discover dragons.
Unless they just leave all as the bottom type and don't put the other text.
Yeah, they might do that.
Because this other text is like in italics, which I don't know if that means they're just like explaining it.
Yeah, it's like they just explain it. I'm not sure if it actually is, if it like, it doesn't actually need to be there, but they might end up removing it, once people understand it, right?
Yeah, or what happens when it becomes a lot more tribes, then how does this scale? But anyway, those are future problems for future Blizzard. Right now, it's gonna be interesting to see if Nightmare Amalgam, facilitates any of those kind of tribal decks that have been struggling.
Definitely
your
for CNC
Shamans,
play.
Yeah, your Elemental Shamans even.
In which ones exactly, I'm not sure, but I'm almost 100% sure this will see played some synergy deck. I mean, some tribal deck, right?
But it kind of has to find balance where there's not too many, like a dominant tribal deck or too many tribal decks going around. Otherwise, it's going to get very dominated by crabs.
Yeah, it's going to be like a circle, right? It's going to be like, as soon as these pop up more, it's going to be like, okay, just run all 4 crabs.
Oh boy.
Crab meta.
Yeah. Next we have Rotten Applebaum. This is a 5-mana 4/5 taunt. It's a common, and it has Death Rattle, restore 4 health to your hero. So I mean, I think initially when we were discussing this card, you were quite excited by it. For me, it's a bit meh. I think like most scenarios, the 5-mana 4/5 on taunt is pretty weak and it doesn't really have enough of an impact on the board. Sure, restoring 4 health is cool, but and there's not that many efficient ways to do that right now. But I can't think of many control decks that would be in a rush to play this.
I don't know. I think like for me, I think this seems to be quite a solid mid range or control deck. I mean, basically, if you think of it as like Sludge Belcher.
But it's not, though, because it doesn't leave 2 bodies.
It doesn't leave a taunt behind, but it gains 4 health instead. Which, I mean, basically could be potentially better than the 1/2 taunt, right?
Yeah.
So I really like the Rotten Applebaum, and I really think it's if in slower decks, I think it's going to see play. I just like taunt. I like things that give me taunt. Like that have taunt and gain health, right?
Sure. I think the big thing for me is that Nzoth is going away, and I think this
Yeah,
would have been a really good card with Nzoth in those kind of control decks because
yeah,
bringing back
definitely.
the Applebaum would have been really powerful. But now,
Yeah,
without the Nzoth, I kind of question whether it, works a lot of the time. It's a good minion to cube in non-Warlock decks because you would rather just cube other things in Warlock, but maybe in those kind of things.
Spurting Umbra with this is obviously like
Sure.
silly, right? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously that's Happy
gives you
Christmas Land.
Sure, that gives you immediate value. One quick thing I want to go back to mention about Nightmare Amalgam is it's actually probably pretty good in Arena because it allows you to draft into any of those synergies when you pick them. Plus, it's just good
That's
stats
true.
on curve.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I wanted to go back to mention about that. So next we have Rebuke. This is a paladin spell. It costs 2 mana, it's a common, and it reads enemy spells cost 5 more next turn. So you're kind of Loatheb effect, but attached to a
So yeah,
spell rather than a minion.
for those of, I mean, just for those of you who haven't been playing for that long or who weren't in the beginning, Lotheb was a legendary minion uh,
Naxxramas.
from Naxxramas, which was the first Hearthstone expansion. It was a 5 mana, 5/5 legendary minion that basically had this effect as a battle cry. So it
Yeah.
was a very powerful effect. It saw
And it
play in a lot of different decks.
and it still does in Wild
still
to this
does
day. It's
Wild.
probably one of the most common cards across like all classes and all decks, Lotheb, because
Yeah,
it's
it's a
such a
deck.
powerful way of locking down your opponent's next turn in a way that they can't clear your board. But the question is Rebuke anywhere near as good when it comes with no body?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, because like, so my first thought was when I saw this card was, ooh, aggro Murloc Paladin. What they, those decks want it because, the turn you expect your opponents to play a big AoE, you play a Rebuke, and then you make, their curve and their turn really awkward, right? If you play this before the Mage's Flame Strike or before their Blizzard or before the Dragon's Fury, you can really upset their turn and get you that one extra turn of, your board not being cleared. On
Yeah.
the flip side, though, the problem is unlike Lothep, it doesn't impact the board. It doesn't put a minion on board. Lothep had the really good advantage of, besides it shutting down your opponent, it was a 5/5,
Yeah.
which meant that there was a good chance that 5 was going to connect. Whereas Rebuke, it's a 2 mana spell, so it's much cheaper, but there's no minion attached to it. There's no body to, help you.
Yeah. Are there any kind of particular minions we maybe want to combo with Rebuke in the same turn? I mean, that's kind of the one thing that really sticks out as a way to kind of maybe facilitate more of a 2-turn combo that's less interactable by spells. I mean, I think the effect is really powerful. Like it's
Yeah.
difficult to underestimate how powerful the effect is. I'm just not sure what the paladin deck is that really wants it, because I think you talk about the aggro decks, but in those decks you really don't want to Rebuke, I don't think, because largely you just don't want to draw Rebuke most of the time. It's kind of a fringe like
You want it exactly
anti.
at a certain time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You only want it to at like exactly turn 6 or turn 7.
Yeah, and those kind of cards generally tend to be not that great for decks that are trying to be consistent in their game plan, which is what
Yeah,
aggro decks are trying to usually do. They're trying to kind of be as consistent as they can in punishing your opponent's inconsistency, right?
yeah. I mean, we might see this in some sort of slower deck where maybe some sort of Exodia paladin becomes a thing again, or some control paladin. Maybe this is a card that's just helps you slow down. I mean, another way of using this is also, besides stopping AoE, you can also use it to stop yourself from dying. So much like previously, you used to use Lotheb against Miracle Rogues or Freeze Mages to stop them from Pyroblast in your face. This is also potentially against burn decks. So, like if you're scared of Secret Mage decks now with
Yeah.
Fireballs or Pyroblast, this obviously shuts down Pyroblast for a turn.
Yeah, or if you want to stop some of the powerful cheap spells like Dark Pact that are in the meta, making it cost 6 means you can't cube Dark Pact in the same turn, for instance.
Yeah, you can't Lackey Dark Pact.
Yeah, you can't Lackey Dark Pact. So maybe as a kind of a tech card for Paladins, I think it's going to need a more specific Paladin deck where you're trying to get away with something over 2 turns that, is going to make sense. It would have been very interesting if, let's say, this was a buff, because then you would have had a really powerful turn with Lanessa at some points, but I think that probably would have made it a
Oh,
little bit too good.
yeah.
Like, even if it was a buff that just gave a minion plus 1 health, right? Like, the weakest kind of buff you can think of, maybe.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know. I think that probably
That
is
would
a bit
probably
too
be a little
powerful.
bit too good with something like
Especially, I mean,
Hagatha.
then you might, you might break the game and make Quest Paladin like OP, right?
Maybe. Uh, okay, so next we have Vivid Nightmare. This is a priest spell, 3 mana. It is an epic, and it reads: choose a friendly minion, summon a 1/1 copy. Sorry, summon a copy of it with 1 health remaining. So it still has its normal attack, and it's basically damaged down to 1 health. So you can heal it. And have effects like Northshire Cleric, etc. go off, and you can also use cards like Circular Healing to get it back to a closer to full health state if it has more than 5 health.
So the immediate comparison to this is obviously Molten Reflection from Mage. So there's, I mean, quite a few, like there's a sort of quite a bit of debate as to, what the first, I mean, my first thought when you look at this is, combo, you play like Radiant Elementals, you play this, and you get some sort of silly combo off, or I'm not quite sure what.
Well,
Uh,
Shadow Essence allows you to get the stuff dead from your deck, like Valen and the Radiant Elementals, and then you can revive with the Spellstone, or Malagos for that matter. You can revive with the Spellstone and
Yet again.
Eternal Servitude, right? So like you do Eternal Servitude Malagos, or you Eternal Servitude Valen, and then you can Vivid Nightmare twice plus. No, you twice,
Yeah,
and then you can't actually do anything. You still need like Radiant Elementals on the board to make that
yeah, you
work.
double rate. I mean, like double rate enemy. So there's probably a combo that's quite a high, for like quite a complicated combo that requires a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and then
I mean,
you still need to then make it work with like 2 Mind Blasts and 2 Holy Smites probably.
the
So
other alternative is
yeah,
simply just using this in Big Priest, a Big Priest like deck.
yeah.
Where you basically just whatever you Shadow Essence, you just copy it. Even if it's on 1 health and like you can try heal it, or just even getting that Lich King, getting that extra card for the turn, right? And
Yeah.
forcing your opponent to deal with the taunt might be good enough.
Yeah, something you res with like a Eternal Servitude or with the Spellstone. Even if
Yeah,
it's, let's say it's like an Obsidian statue, which can gain you back health, and it obviously has like that relevant death rattle. Obviously, Big Priest is taking a big hit with Bonds
a
leaving,
big hit. I see what you did there.
with Bonds and your Charge leaving
Yeah.
the standard. So whether that deck's necessarily going to be the right deck for it, I'm going to be interested to see if there's kind of a combo deck. Now I've kind of got my mind churning on the Malagos Valen combos with Radiant Elemental.
I mean, there's also the Orkanite. There's also the weird Orkanite combos as well.
Yeah, maybe. Uh, there's also like maybe it could work for Death Rattle Priest, as memey as that is, right? You've got
Yeah.
Twilight's Call already. This you got extra ways of copying your Death Rattle minions, but I mean, so you have to have less in your deck, right? But then I don't really think you get anywhere. Like Amara is not enough of a win condition to make that kind of Quest Priest really worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting card. These sort of cards always very difficult to assess because there's always the potential there's some ridiculous combo out there, right?
Yeah, but it's also interesting because you can get a bunch of extra copies with it from Shadow Visions. So you can probably make You can probably like have 3 Radiant Elementals.
Yes.
So
Tips
we can do the Exodia thing with Radiant Elementals, but we don't have an Antonidas and an extra turn to kind of
or
get there in the same
fireballs or
way as
any way
Quest
to
Mage.
do anything with the free stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you get the Radiant Elementals first and then you go like Spellstone or Eternal Servitude, maybe you can make it so that you have enough chance of getting back your Malagos or Valen for the Mind
That
Blast Holy
feels
Smite
that
combos.
feels super high rolly though. That sounds
Yeah,
like literally everything needs to align perfectly.
yeah, it
You know,
definitely seems a tricky
to have,
combo to pull off, but there's an OTK combo in there definitely. Whether
yeah.
it's reliable enough is the big question.
Yep.
Uh, and so next we have Whispering Woods. This is a Druid epic spell. 4 mana, summon a 1/1 Wisp for each card in your hand. So, why do they hate penguins? Why couldn't they give us penguins instead of wisps?
So
I
obviously
mean, the
that's got the
wisps
whole
make more
druid
sense
vibe.
for druids, yes, I
Yeah.
know. But,
So 4 mana.
I mean, penguining woods? No, doesn't work.
Poor penguin. So I mean, so immediately the first thing you do is you go, okay, 4 mana. So for this to be anywhere remotely like playable, you'd probably need to at least have 5 or more cards in your hand, right?
I think it's more than that though, because if you
Yeah.
look at
Yeah, the 1/1 stat.
comparisons in Druid, you're looking at like Living Mana, which you're getting 10/10 stats for, bare minimum, right? If you're casting on turn 5 with no innovates or coins or anything, you're getting 10/10 stats. You're paying the downside of losing your mana for the next turn, which is a relatively big downside. So I think you need to get like 6 or 7 stats for this, which means you're basically filling your board with wisps at that point.
Yeah, I mean, also the sort of the combos potentially is obviously this with Power of the Wild because Mark lets to retain Art. That's kind of the instinctive, go wide on the board and then buff them. And then
Yeah.
obviously you have the advantage of having a bunch of 2/2s that don't kill your mana crystals if they get devolved or bounced or
Yeah,
whatever the
so
case may be.
you're more likely to be able to kill them with something like Branching Paths or Savage Roar the next turn.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it's a card that I could potentially actually I could see it seen play in like sort of aggressive token based druids. Uh,
I don't think an aggressive deck is where you see this seeing play, because in an aggressive deck it's too often a really terrible top deck. Like the
yeah,
reason Living Mana is so good in those decks because it's refill when you have nothing left, but Whispering Woods is the exact
yeah,
opposite of that, right?
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
it
If you
needs
reach
to
a
be in
point where your
a
top deck
much
is bad,
slower kind of, I want to OTK you deck, but I'm not really sure that's necessarily going to work out.
I mean, people are basically you're really joking that hand druid might be a thing, right? Where you start playing giants and you just
Yeah,
have try to get a massive hand with the druid.
maybe giants into like sea giants. Those kind of work with Whispering Woods.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my.
it's difficult to see where Whispering Woods is really gonna see play. I think this is a very tricky card to kind of
Yeah.
analyze here. It's
And also, because I think part of how good it is also might determine also in the meta, like which classes are most popular, because it
mm,
comes down to which classes have the AoE to deal with it efficiently
yeah,
versus classes that
Defile,
don't. Yeah,
Warpath.
like I mean, the fire hurts us, the whirlwind effects hurts it.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if it ever. I mean, if this card ever
even
becomes a
Fan of
problem,
Knives.
yeah, mage can start running arcane explosions. I mean,
I
if
mean,
they're really desperate, is what I'm saying.
I doubt it, but yeah, Volcanic Potion is
Volcanic
going away.
potion. Oh, volcanic. Oh,
It's
it's going away.
rotating out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a potion, which means Streets of Gadgetzan.
Oh yes, yes.
I'm pretty sure. Even though it's Volcano, which always makes me think, or Volcanic, which makes me think of Ungoro. But yeah, so Whispering Woods, I think a very tricky card. We're gonna have to see how that pans out. But the last time
Yeah.
we said a Druid spell that summoned minions was bad was Living Mana, and that one turned out pretty good. So
Yeah.
I'm quietly optimistic this could be something, but overall, I'm not sold. Next we have another Druid spell, Witchwood Apple. This is kind of a card meant to work with something like Whispering Woods, right? It's a 2 mana
Yeah.
spell, it's a common, and it adds 3 2/2 treants to your hand.
Which I presume
So,
costs 2 mana.
yeah. Based on what we've seen from all the treants before that are summoned by like Living Mana, or well, those ones are slightly different, or what we've seen, the
Force
what's
of
it?
nature.
Force of Nature treants. Those are all kind of 2/2 treants. That cost
So
2. So, I mean,
it's-
this is the hand druid you're talking about, right?
yeah.
But what's the
So
rest of
the
the
immediate
payoff? That's kind of the question I have here.
the problem also is the turn where you play this, it does nothing. It's not
Yeah.
even like wild growth, which ramps your mana. You literally are spending 2 mana to do nothing. And yes, you get 3 cards, but the problem is you're getting 3 really substandard cards. A 2 mana 2/2 is not really what you want to be playing.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've got massive buff synergies. Uh,
And Trance are not really a tribe, so there's no real tribal synergy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. Maybe there's more cards that will support it, or maybe they're trying to make it work with some other cards.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting.
we'll have to see.
I mean, you'd think Trance could be a bit of a theme. This is a
Forest.
expansion set in a wood.
Yeah, it's possible.
Or
Yeah,
woods. So yeah, maybe we'll see some more treant kind of thing. Maybe this is kind of something they're trying to push with this kind of hand druid. I mean, these are the two first druid cards we're seeing, right? Other than the
yeah.
stag. and they're both kind of pushing this hand
Your
druid
hand size
game plan.
matters, basically.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep an eye on what other support there is, but right now, not looking super powerful. So moving on to Shaman now, we have Witch's Apprentice. It is a 1 mana 0/1 beast with taunt. So basically a
Babbling book.
hex frog. Well, no, we haven't even got
Yeah.
to the babbling book part. And then its battle cry is to add a random shaman spell to your hand. So this is where the kind of babbling book comparison comes in. But it's a more thematic shaman one in that it's a 0/1 beast with taunt. So it is exactly a frog in a witch's hat. So that makes sense here. Overall, the big question is just how good are random shaman spells? Probably worse than random mage spells, right?
Yeah, the point, like, there's a lot of, ancestral healing, Tatek, Might, some of those freeze ones. There are some really potatoey bad, but also, I mean, in a similar vein, you can get cards like Lightning Storm, you can get Hex, you know, I think you can still get you can get Volcano,
Yeah,
you can get Wind Fury, you can, so it's the thing is you can get there's a lot of versatile shaman spells you can get. Sorry?
Rock Biter Weapon, Lava Burst, even those are kind of still pretty
Lightning
decent.
Bolt, Earth Shock.
But I think before we kind of decide how good random shaman spells are, we need to look at the final card we have. This is the super OP spoiled card that we saw a little bit of in the very first reveal. Hagatha, the new Warlock legendary hero card. Sorry, Shaman hero card.
Only one for the set, they said.
Yeah.
The only hero.
Yeah, this is the Witch of the Witchwood, and Hagatha is an 8 mana hero card. So it's legendary, it gives you 5 armor, as they all do, and its battle cry is to deal 3 damage to all minions. So this is dealing damage to your own minions as well, of course, not just your opponent's ones. And with it comes the Bewitch hero power, which is a passive hero power that reads, after you play a minion, add a random shaman spell to your hand. So this is kind of why we want to wait on our discussing random shaman spells, because that seems to be a little bit of the theme here for this expansion so far and the cards we've seen so far for shaman.
Yeah, and just about the little bit that was interesting when they were talking about it in the live stream, where they say that they specifically wanted it in a way where you don't have a shaman deck that runs both Thrall and Hagatha. And Thrall relies on having a board presence and a more sort of a board-oriented strategy, whereas this could just be. I mean, Hagatha could easily. I foresee it seeing playing a slower, more control-y shell. I mean, that might be good. I mean, Shaman. I don't think we've. It's been a very long time since we've had a good control Shaman sort of deck.
Yeah.
People have been trying Jade Druid for a long time, but never
Jade
really.
Shaman, but
Jade Shaman.
Hagatha's definitely more of a reset the board, and Thrall's more of a push my board advantage kind of card. So they're very different in how they affect the board, particularly on your side of the board. And for Hagatha, the other thing that kind of people I've seen discuss a little bit is maybe the even shaman game plan. And maybe where it works with that. I mean, we saw the eel that was released. That's obviously a pretty powerful card, a 2 mana 2/3 that deals 2 damage. So maybe could work with that. I mean, the idea definitely with Hagatha is that you would want to go a very minion heavy deck. So the first kind of thing that sticks out to me there with Hagatha is Elemental Shaman. I mean, you have Kalimos, that's another even card at 8 mana, which you can play after this. And,
but you don't have Servant of Kalimos, which is 5 there.
Yeah, you don't have Servant of Kalimos, so that sucks a little bit for the Elemental game. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that necessarily works with the even plan as well, but Elemental's definitely a good way of also repeating minions with Fireflies. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure the even and the Elemental thing go together, but those are 2 different kind of shells where maybe Hagatha could work.
Yeah, and I mean, we'd have to first wait and see what more Shaman spells get spoiled to basically be able to do the stats. I mean, because off the top of your head, like you said, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, some direct damage, but you can also get Feral Spirits. You can get the Frost, whatever it is, the 1 mana Frost Shock or whatever it is. Yeah, but like we say, you can you can get absolute garbage, ranging like from cryostasis to ancestral healing to what's it, totemic might.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing that Hagatha has in her favor is that you get the cards to your hand, right? So it's
Yeah,
not like we've seen with the Shaman weapon, where you kind of forced to cast the spell. In that case, you kind of discovered at least, right?
yeah.
And then you kind of forced to cast the spell, and then it's also a random target. So in this case, a lot of the targeted Shaman spells you can still use to your advantage. You can maybe even use them to your advantage if it's kind of an overload deck. Maybe Hagatha works in that kind of overload control shell. We've
Yeah.
seen the frost what's it, the frost giant? No, not frost
Oh,
giant. It's
yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's
whatever.
Frost.
Is it frost giant? Yeah.
Oh, Snow Fury,
Snow Fury, that's the one.
Snow Fury
I knew it
Giant,
was
the
Snow
Overload Giant.
something, but Frost Giant was the hero power one back in the day,
Yeah,
back in TGT days.
back
So
then.
yeah, maybe Hagatha works in that kind of deck where you're gonna overload. The problem being that you probably want to have a lot of overload spells in your deck because those are generally the best. And Hagatha in control seems a bit counterintuitive because you want to play minions to get more spells, and control generally tends to favor more spells over minions to be
Yeah,
reactive.
that's
So
true.
that's kind of the
So,
problem there with those kind of control archetypes in Hagatha.
but I mean, the battle cry is a very powerful effect. The passive is potentially a very powerful effect. I mean, even like they showed a video on stream. If you play the Witch's Apprentice, while you have Hagatha up, you get obviously you get the two spells,
Yeah.
which is just also pretty good value. But I mean, the question is the value going to be good enough? I mean, so far we've seen Babbling Book be good. I mean, we've seen Lyra also be good.
Yeah, I definitely think that
So
the value from Hagatha is pretty decent, and the fact that it's a passive hero power means you're not paying anything to get that
yeah,
card every time, right? You just have to play a minion, and I'm definitely liking the elemental shell the most of that we've discussed of any of these,
yeah.
because it gives you a lot of those cheap, repeatable elemental effects, and then you have cards like Servant of Calamos as well to keep kind of
Ooh.
discovering them.
Yeah,
And your Ignis Elementals and your Fireflies to just play a bunch of cheap ones to eventually get you good spells. Because the thing is, you need to be able to play quite a few minions to eventually get the good spells.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, you don't really want five cryostasis.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, like, do you think Hagatha, it's difficult to say better than Thrall, worse than Thrall. Like, obviously, they,
Ooh,
as you said, they're kind of
it's
designed to work in two very different decks. But
I mean, we'll see which ones, if any of them see play still,
yeah,
and what decks.
is
I
Hagatha
don't
going to
know.
be the savior for Shaman?
It's very possible. I mean, if depending on what other cards they print, it could very well be the resurgence of Control Shaman.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think Hagatha is a very, very powerful value engine for Shaman decks, and I think it's more of like a value engine for a mid-range Shaman deck rather than a control Shaman. That's kind of where I see it because
yeah,
you want to be on a heavier minion package. And importantly, it is also when you play a minion, not summon, so it doesn't work with things like Feral Spirits or Primal Fin Totem, at least on the minions that are summoned there. So, yeah, Hagatha is maybe not as OP as we were kind of first looking at, but maybe in playtesting and when we actually get some hands on with it, it will seem. But that is all the cards we have. 10 cards revealed in that in the revealed stream, as well as the two cards that we covered from before. So uh, that is everything we have so far. We'll be back definitely with more videos as more cards are revealed. Please
this
share your
sort of
thoughts with us. You can find us on Twitter. You can find Pandemonia at PandemoniaZA. And you can find myself at dib_gaming. And then please also comment on the YouTube video to let us know your thoughts, and share as well um, to let us know uh, what you're thinking about the cards. So thanks a lot, everyone. Cheerio.
Cheers.